Hello, in this presentation I will be reviewing Our Lady of Assassins by Fernando Vallejo and Down the Rabbit Hole by Juan Pablo Villalobos. Both stories depict their behavior to murders and violence in various situations. In this slide, image are covers of both novels. Virgin Mary with a gun portrays a young man hitman prays for their protection while killing other people. Down the Rabbit Hole looks like a person riding on an animal with lots of hats and a sword. It looks drawing of the narrator who obsessed with hats, samurai and pygmy hippopotamus. Going further, my question is both novels are written using the comical sense towards cruelty and killings. What is the importance of using humor in portrayal of such cruelty? Doesn't it show irrelevance to all humankind? I understand the significance of choosing two different narrators adds excitement to the story. However, doesn't associate humor with the crime encourage inhumanity? The thesis statement. Down the Rabbit Hole and Our Lady of Assassin, Fernando's attitude toward violence more inhumane because he had seen a world without violence once, whereas Tochtli never had glimpse of cruelty-free world. The rest of the presentation is about claiming the argument of how past matters to the narrator's approach to the violence. You don't need me, of course, to tell you what a hitman is. My grandpa sure he would need me too, but then my grandpa died years and years ago. The narrator is recalling his childhood memory when he used to live in Savaneta. He is describing that hitman was not a common word back then, that everybody had known its meaning. He is using sarcasm like years and years ago and my poor grandpa, knowing nothing overhead railway or hitman. He is disregarding the fact that he is dating one of the hitmen, yet his inner sense denying his involvement in the crime world. He is aware enough to separate the situation from the past and the present. He had experienced the crime-free world and he shows pity to the present world. However, he is preferring to live in the present by adopting its brutal norms. On the other hand, Tochtli lives in a world that his father Yokot made for him. Realists are people who think reality isn't how you think it is. Yokot told me that. Reality is like this and that's it. He only knows 14 people who live around him. He never went to school or met other people that he would know that there is a world out there without a crime that ever existed. Yokot said to him that they are a gang and that is the reality. Yokot is a realist. In his eyes, the further text definitely shows Tochtli has his own opinion on what his father believes, but the knowledge is limited to him. He can only discover the place where he is living because he is not allowed to go to the other place without security or adding other people. Other 14 or 15 as he described in the text mostly stayed muted. He can only explore limited knowledge from his surroundings. Usually, a teacher comes to teach him about Japanese culture that inspired him to become a samurai, a warrior, mainly a legal and prestigious warrior. He is oblivious to the world he lives in as his world doesn't believe in legal actions, neither is ever considered prestigious. This is the scene where the Alexis didn't need Fernando's presence, so Fernando went outside to wander around the streets of Medellin. He caught up in a moment of a fight between two gangs. In the situation, an ordinary human would try to save oneself from it. Yet, Fernando, who raised in a non-violent childhood, chose to put his life in a danger to show his bravery to the situation. People were screaming to him to lay himself down. Yet, He wanted to satisfy his ego that he was not afraid of death. He compares his present events with his past experience that would illustrate how current scenarios are unpleasant for him. In contrast, he is taking pleasure in these dreadful situations. He is enhancing and relishing the crime world, knowing its horrific consequences. He can choose to save the lives of Alexei as he claims in love with him, but he preferred to become his partner in crime. Shifting to the down the rabbit hole context, Governor came to meet Yoko to talk about cocaine business. While they were discussing, Tochtli was there, eating a quesadilla. According to the Yoko, the governor doesn't administer the state or anyone, and he is portraying the governor as a lousy person when Tochtli asked. Tochtli still sticks with his own opinion of the governor is a good human being. The text shows Yoko's influence on Tochtli's upbringing. The governor doesn't want a young kid in their cocaine business conversation, and Yoko got offended by the governor's preference. He bashed a pile of money on his face to keep his thought to himself. Tochtli was there all the time, while Yoko acted out like this. It is a human nature to get influence from their everyday events. Tochtli's everyday life being surrounded by this action such as anger, humiliation, rudeness, and using abusive words would make certain impression on his upbringing. But dead people don't count because the dead aren't people, they are corpses. Down the Rabbit Hole is all about a kid learns from his father. Observing his father, he learns how the human body turns into the corpses. He understands that the dead body is not live people anymore. He is not even questioning why Yoko turning into these live bodies into the corpses. He just explains every event with no emotion, like killing is not a crime, but it is a common thing that everybody does. The quote proves his mentality. On the contrary, the taxi driver would no longer have to tolerate impertinent passengers. He was released from working. Death released him. Lady Death. Fernando encourages violence and he enjoys becoming a part of it. Alexei was born and raised in an environment like Tochtli, not financially, but in a violent environment. He never saw the crime-free world. The quotes are evidence of Fernando's was entertained after Alexei showed the taxi driver for just a small argument. He was fascinated by seeing the dead body as he examined the taxi driver's dead body. He says, taxi driver is free from the burden of this violent life. He used the calming word released like a death helped the taxi driver to be at peace. Lady Death delivered him to heaven. No one has the right to another person's life or death. They do not have any kind of legality to take someone's life and making statements of being at peace. This slide shows the difference between young criminals and mature criminals. Guns, killings, corpses, dead bodies, blood, and drugs. Alexis, Wilmer, and Tochtli's use of adult vocabulary and attempt to shore up the ruins of their terrorized childhood. Alexis listened to loud music and Tochtli watched samurai movies. The loudness and the violence seem to cushion their void. They do not understand when their human mind sympathizes in some situation. For example, Alexei was not able to kill a wounded dog and Tochtli cried and wet his pants when his pygmy hippopotamus was shot to death. These situations manifest that they are not emotionless. Their circumstances made them desensitized. This is the void they are trying to fill in their life by using other or outer pleasure. Collecting heads, swords, and hippopotamus, and Alexei listening to loud music and watching crime TV shows is a proof of that they are trying to neglect the remorse by engaging themselves into these activities. Fernando and Yokold, they do not seem to care about their guilt feeling. Yokold watched his son's involvement in their business, and Fernando is embracing his devil side, entering into the crime world. Representation of violence in humor. The quoted sentences are shockingly confirmation of Tochtli's already easy intimacy with the violence. Orifices are holes you make in people so their blood comes out. Another way of making corpses is by cutting, which you can also do with knives or with machetes and guillotines. Using machetes and guillotines to cut people, he specifically uses people, which means live people. As we saw before, he knows the difference between corpses and people. He knows corpses doesn't feel anything, yet people do. Significant in all this, in proliferating the possible interpretations and generating intrigue, is Tochtli's tantalizing, undeveloped knowledge. He reports these things because he lacks the context to explain them. The other way around, Fernando certainly can differentiate the two worlds. Alexei shot a taxi driver for no reason, yet he is adoring Alexei's act. What a wonderful explosion! Are we James Bond, maybe fully equipped for any emergency? Let him finish burning, so he won't suffer anymore. He passionately analyzed his action and illustrated as if Alexei's action was artistic. Whenever Alexei kills, Fernando always emphasizes his work of killing so innovatively and explicitly, like he is not killing people, but he is contributing his expertise to the world. To conclude, Down the Rabbit Hole and Our Lady of Assassins interprets violence and crime with a comical approach. Violence and humor co-originate when one is unknown of actions. Down the Rabbit Hole gratifies the chemistry of both as a narrator does not, aware of another time existence. In Our Lady of Assassins, Fernando is matured enough to make his own judgments on what is wrong and right. He becomes a part of a violent world. Young hitman Alexei and Wilmer became his lover and he took pleasure from their violent behavior. He still ended up being alone as their both love died. His acquirement doesn't justify his engagement in the crime world. At the age of being a father figure, he was not shameful of his actions. He had sexually associated with young hitmen as well as took part of in their killing journeys. He always pities hitmen, yet he never tried to help one of them. They both ended up dead, and he still being hypocrite finding love in this crime world. On the other side, Tochtli's unawareness doesn't prove his innocence to the violence, but it is still a considerate point that culture and environment plays an role in building one's personality. Tochtli lives in a palace that seems a prison with images. He is ignorant of his surrounding occurrence. His father kills people, talk about drug business, building an in-house zoo, and using vulgar language in front of his young son. Yoko encouraged his son to get involved like he is preparing his son to how to become a Yoko one day. One day you will have to do the same for me. The Yoko enforced Tochtli to understand the samurai film's ending that one day he has to kill someone.